Thank you.
So yes, settle onto your backs and just a couple of big sighing breaths. We've got a few more people arriving. Hi, Kate. So we're just starting with maybe 5 minutes of lying down. And we're going to be focusing again on feet, like we did last week. But yeah, we'll start with a little bit of lying down. So when you've had a couple of big sighing breaths, what you're then going to do is fold your knees into your chest. And you can see how that feels. You can do a little bit of rocking from side to side across the back of your pelvis. And then 3 times, we're going to take our arms and legs up to the ceiling and give them a shake out. And we're going to do that with a buzzing breath. Sorry, that's the bit I forgot. So with your knees folded into your chest, let a breath come in. And then having a bit of a shake out. So we'll do that twice more. So let a breath come in. And then one final time, let a breath come in. And then settle down with your knees bent and your feet standing on the floor. And you're going to come to a little bit of letting your knees tilt to the right and to the left. So Tracy and Panna, when you arrive, we're just starting with a teeny little bit of lying down.
Thanks, Cara. Sorry, I couldn't get my laptop going at all this morning. A bit like me.
Oh. Yes, I know the feeling. Friday morning. So yes, a little bit of lying with your knees bent, feet standing on the floor, letting your knees tilt to the right and to the left. And when you've done that a few times, you're going to pause in the middle and you're going to cross your arms over your chest. And now you're going to let your elbows and your knees and your head all rock in the same direction. So we come to that movement where we're rocking across the back of our body. And I'm just thinking, lying here, how it's rather nice to be having a little roll around on the back. So just carry on doing this in a really sort of easy, lazy way. We are going to come onto our side and have a few breaths there, and then come onto hands and knees. So you can take your time, especially if you've just joined us. Do a little bit more rocking. And then whenever you're ready, rolling onto your side and having a few breaths on your side. And then we'll come over onto hands and knees, where we'll start thinking a little bit more about our feet again. So I think we focused on feet a fair bit last Friday, and I've been continuing that in my sort of practice and classes. So what I'd like you to do when you come onto hands and knees is just do a little bit of tucking your toes under and untucking them. So we're going to work with these two movements on hands and knees, the toes being tucked and the feet being flat. So see how it feels. And so, there's one on a sort of physical level, we're just, releasing tension from our feet, our winter feet. But what you can then start to do is alternate as you rock back. So one time rocking back with your toes tucked under, and then one time rocking back with your feet flat. But I just know personally, when I do, make this focus on my feet in my practice, it does really help. I haven't spotlit myself, have I? Let me do that. Sorry, I'm obviously in a Friday a Friday feeling myself. So yes, rocking back, alternating, toes tucked, feet flat. And so I know for myself that when I focus on my feet in my yoga practice, it does really help my general sense of well-being. Now, I'd like you to rock all the way back into, when your feet are flat, rock all the way back into child, or kneeling if you prefer, and just let yourself have a couple of quiet breaths. And particularly if you have just joined, there is this opportunity to just focus into your breathing for a couple of cycles of breath. So feel your breath come in, feel your breath leave you. And I think one of the things that's really important and perhaps harder when we're not together in person is just to take these sort of quiet times in our practice and not to feel that we're rushing. From being in child or being in kneeling, you're going to come back onto hands and knees, and you're going to lengthen each leg out behind you in turn. So as we do this, we can tuck the toes under. So again, we come back to that feeling of the toes being tucked. And then what I'd like you to do is a little bit of rocking forwards and back, but keeping your toes tucked under now. So toes tucked under, rocking your pelvis back over your heels, and then bringing your shoulders back over your hands. And eventually I'd like you to take this movement into dog pose. So from that rocked back position, then start letting your knees come off the floor, moving up into dog, and just, first dog pose on a Friday morning. Just, keep it easy. Easing into your body. How do you feel? What can you do to help soften the dog pose, to help release tension, to make it as enjoyable and beneficial as possible? Good, very nice. Lovely. Another breath or two in dog pose. And when you come down from dog, just for a moment or two, sit in kneeling so that you can take the weight off your hands and give your hands a shake out, but also just so you can feel the flats of your feet on the floor. And then we're going to come back onto hands and knees, and just briefly we're going to take our awareness, our attention away from our feet, and you're going to do some cat movements. And of course, I was thinking cat, but if you feel that you want to do a bit of tail wagging, if you feel you want to sort of mix things up a little bit, of course you can do that. So just seeing how it feels for this little period to bring our attention to the centre of ourselves. How does the lower back feel? How does it feel in the upper back between our shoulder blades as we do our cat movements? And again, if it feels that some little tail wagging movements would be helpful, you can also do those. And what I'd like you to do, from whenever you're ready, from a rounded up cat, so rounding your back to the ceiling, looking back behind you, then moving back into another child pose. And even if you don't want to stay in child, move back in that rounded up way and then come into kneeling if you prefer. And then another couple of breaths in child pose or kneeling. And again, this chance just to slow down. Feel the movement of the breath through your body. Feel the breath come in. And when your breath leaves, you just try and let yourself soften. Let your shoulders soften. Let your jaw soften. That's nice. And we're going to then move back into dog pose. So you can come back onto your hands and knees. You can tuck your toes under. In this dog pose, we're going to think about working into the feet a bit more. So moving into dog pose, tucking your toes under, picking your knees up off the floor. When you've arrived in dog, you maybe have a couple of breaths in dog, resting down through your arms as much as possible. Then you can explore those movements in dog where we come with the feet, we come onto the ball of the foot, of one foot, onto the tips of the toes, and then onto the top of the toes. So these movements where 1 foot at a time, we're rolling through the underside of the toes, the tip of the toes, the top of the toes. Obviously, we're not taking so much weight into that foot. You're keeping more weight in the foot that you're not rolling onto, I think, because, yeah, we're just working into the toes, but we don't want to do anything that's really unpleasant. Good. And what I find is when I've done this a few times, then I just want to settle into, for a couple of breaths, into a quiet dog pose where I'm not, fiddling around with my feet, where I'm just trying to feel the whole of myself in dog and feel the movement of the breath through my body. When you come back onto hands and knees, you're going to keep your toes tucked under, but this time you're going to walk your hands in towards your knees and let your knees come up off the floor. So just come into this sort of little, I suppose this little mini squat, isn't it? But your heels are not down. And spread your toes out a little bit here. So we can encourage the big toes towards each other, away from the other toes, and the little toes out to the sides a little bit as well. And then we can do a little bit of rocking here. And we will take this down into the one that I think you were just doing, Rosie, our delightful one with our toes tucked under and sitting back over our heels. And I think we might have done this, I can't remember when we did it last Friday. So knees down on the ground, if we can. That's it, toes tucked under, good. Having a breath or two here. And I was just thinking this, from all the feet thing I've been doing, this does feel marginally better, but I won't keep you there too long. So you can come forwards, you can untuck your toes, drum the tops of your feet on the floor. And then again, lengthen each leg out and turn behind you, tucking your toes under. And really feel the back of the knees opening. And you've got a little choice now. We're going to come to sit either in kneeling, and we're going to go back a little bit, or you're going to sit down in between your heels in Virasana. So it might be that you need to have a cushion in between, in between your heels and your bottom. Or if you're going to sit down in between your heels, you might want to be on a cushion. But, just choose which one is better for you today. I mean, you can have a little try of each of them. So we're going to be doing this, this sort of going back movement where we're trying to encourage the pelvis to tuck under. And we're looking down at our belly. So we're trying to avoid arching in the lower back. So either sitting between the heels and you can try both. Yeah, try to avoid, it's interesting, isn't it? So as you go back, it might be that your knees start to wander. So Kate, not that I'm so a little bit of knees wandering. Good. So really what we're doing in both of these, so whether you're sitting on your heels or between your heels, is we're trying to stretch a bit specifically into our quads. And if our knees wanders, we're losing that feeling. Okay, we're going to come back into this because that's not the nicest place to stay. So what I was thinking between side, we'll come onto hands and knees, we'll come into lunge, and then we'll come back into that one. So step 1 foot forwards. And obviously in lunge, we're lengthening into a similar part of our body. So through the fronts of the thighs, the quads, and a little bit, perhaps a little bit more in lunge. So have a few breaths in your lunge. If it's helpful for you, so you can be in lunge with your toes tucked under. If it's helpful for you to ease in and out of lunge, you can untuck your back toes, and you could be doing this sort of easing back and then into lunge if that feels better for you today. So if you're thinking, a bit of movement is what I need. And also it might be that you do a little bit of movement and then you feel that you want to stay in lunge for a few breaths. So that's often how I feel. And just this feeling of opening through the front of the body. Another breath or two. Now, it might be quite nice between sides of lunge to do a dog pose if you like. You don't have to. If you feel comfortable, you could go straight from lunge into dog and swap sides of lunge, or you could go onto hands and knees and then into dog pose. So just, yeah. And when we come into dog, we can feel how we're lengthening through the back of our body, through the backs of our legs, through our lower back, and even sort of lengthening out a bit through the upper back. So yeah, it's quite a nice contrast. And then either from dog pose, you can step your other foot forwards into lunge, or you can come back down on hands and knees and step your other foot forwards into lunge. And then again, coming into lunge, even if you're staying in lunge, you can play around with tucking your back toe under, untucking your toe. It's good work for the feet. If you want to do that easing forwards and back, I mean, I don't know, for my knee, it feels better if my foot is flat when I'm doing this, but these are funny things and it varies a lot from person to person. So a bit of rocking back, a bit possibly of staying in lunge, breathing, giving the weight of the pelvis to the floor. You're right there, B. Good. And again, if you feel that we're going to be coming back into Virasana or kneeling and going back a bit, so if you feel that you'd like to do a dog pose before you do that, and it might be quite nice, so you could step again from your lunge into your dog pose, or from hands and knees into dog. And it doesn't need to be a long dog, you can just have 2 or 3 cycles of breath in dog. It's nice when we keep revisiting dog because there's that feeling of greater ease and comfort. And then coming once more to sit down either on your heels or between your heels. If you're sitting between your heels, it's quite helpful to roll the calves out of the way a little bit. Make sure if you're sitting between your heels that your knees are happy with this. And then, yeah, that's what's very nice. If you're coming, when you're trying to sort of tuck your pelvis under, if you look down at your belly, so you've got this, that's it. It looks really lovely there, Rosie. This sort of curve and softness through the front of your body. So we're trying to avoid the lower back arching and tightening. And yeah, feel that your shoulders can roll in a bit. It's not the most comfortable thing for the shoulders. Good. From here, we're going to be doing one more dog pose and then a forward bend and then coming up into standing. So when you've had enough, onto hands and knees. Nice big hand prints on the floor, tucking your toes under, and one last time coming into dog. And just when you arrive in your dog, whatever you feel like doing in this dog pose. So it could be being quiet, being with your breath, just feeling your body in dog pose. And if there's any little variations, things you want to do, that's absolutely fine. From dog pose, there's no rush, but from dog pose, you will be walking your hands in towards your feet, coming into a forward bend. So we bring all of our weight into our feet. And it might be at this point that you would like to bend your knees, rest your elbows on your thighs. So just see what feels best for your lower back. And just take a moment in your forward bend, really feeling your feet on the floor. The heels will feel a lot clearer on the ground now. And have a look at your toes. We'll be doing more of this in a moment. And then we can roll up into standing or walk our hands up the fronts of our legs and arrive finally in standing on our mats. And the first thing we're going to do is just a bit of this swinging. That's it, swinging twist. Very nice and easy. That's it. We can slap the hands onto the body. And then we're going to do a bit of what, a few things for our feet in standing, a little bit of balancing, a few other things. Good, but just enjoy feeling of the body in movement, but sort of easy movement. A couple more times. And then let yourself settle for a moment. And so first of all, what I'd like you to do is just look down at your feet, have your feet a little distance apart, and have your feet parallel. So a little distance apart, you want your feet under your pelvis. And then just maybe close your eyes for a moment and see how easy is it to drop your weight, drop your awareness down into your feet and feel your feet on the floor. And it could be that to help you with that you sway a little bit from side to side. You don't have to, but sometimes just that little bit of movement and feeling the sort of shift of weight from one foot to the other just helps us be a bit more present in our feet. And then settle in the centre. We're going to do a couple of foot exercises. So the first one you're going to do, you're going to slide one foot forwards and you're going to tap that foot on the floor, the front of the foot. And then you can tap it out in a bit of an inner bit. And I've got my hands on my pelvis because I'm thinking I'm not going to move my pelvis. And if I'm tapping my foot in this little sort of semicircle, quarter circle, my leg is then moving in my hip joint. So there's a bit of extra movement. Good. Don't do it too long, otherwise it gets a bit achy in the front of the ankle. And then do the same thing on the other foot. So let your foot come forwards, a bit of tapping your foot on the floor. And then you can start that sort of tapping in and out. And there's something about these ones that just, I don't know whether we're bringing the noise down from our head into our feet, that my mind always starts to feel a bit quieter. Good. Okay, just then bring the feet back. And maybe actually, I think between these foot things, it's good to give each foot a shake out. And I always think that we're doing a sneaky balance because we're standing on one foot, aren't we? So we shake the other one out without thinking about balancing, so it's a bit easier. You're then going to do the one where you lift your heels and drop them on the floor. So it's with a bit of a sort of thud, which sends a little judder up through you. You can do it quickly. So you can sort of bounce on your heels, sort of quick and small, or you can do slow and big. So you can play around with this, particularly if you don't like it. See if there's a speed or a sort of intensity that feels okay. And the idea is this judder releases tension through us. Okay, just once or twice more. I was just thinking back to the old days here and doing this for like a minute or even 3 minutes. Okay. And then again, just see how the feet feel and perhaps give each foot a shake out again. So there's this real balance to be trod when we're working with our feet of them not getting sort of overly tense and active. We're going to come down into a forward bend now, and you're going to have a little play around with your toes when you're down there. So you can come into a forward bend, you can have your elbows on your thighs, or you can release your arms. And what I'd like you to do with your forward bend, first of all, is just lift your toes up and down off the ground. So can you lift your toes up on their own? Yes, you can obviously use your fingers, and you're going to use your fingers for the next thing. So what I'd like you to do then is see, can you, using your fingers or just your toes, can you lift the toes up, and then can you put your big toes down and your little toes down and keep your 3 middle toes up? And so use your fingers if you need to. And then can you lift your 3 middle toes up and down? And then can you just let them relax on the floor? So obviously we've got winter feet, so our toes may be very uncooperative, but let a breath come in, and then we're going to exhale and roll back up into standing. We can give our feet a little shake out, and then we're going to try and do the same thing in standing. Obviously without using our hands, unless it gets really frustrating. So the first thing is settle your feet down a little distance apart and parallel, and then try lifting all the toes off the ground. And just see if you can feel the heels, the outer edge of the foot, the ball of the foot. And then can you put your big toes down? And it might be that you try that a couple of times. Can you just put the big toes down? If you can you put the little toes down? And then can you just let your 3 middle toes settle onto the floor in a relaxed way without gripping? Good. And then, yes, we're going to do one more foot exercise. So it might be, again, just another quick shake out of the feet. Actually, and this time what you're going to be doing is the feet are not going to be moving, but you're going to be bouncing the rest of your body, bending your knees. So the feet stay stuck on the ground. So it's a bit like they're, glued down. So I'm just sort of bouncing, shaking my arms. Bounce, bounce, bounce. Good. And if you're a bit like me, my knees are slightly sort of grumbling about this. So just keep it a sort of light, easy movement if your knees are feeling a bit grumbly. Okay. Let that go. And then let's just see how it feels to bring our weight onto one leg. So you're going to raise one arm. So this is whichever leg you're going to stand on, take that arm up. And then we're going to start to shift our weight into that leg, that foot. And you're going to do the one where you catch the top of your foot or your trouser leg. So when you've caught the top of your foot or your trouser leg, then your raised arm hand can come down onto your breastbone. And we'll just have a few breaths here. We'll take this a bit further in a moment. But to start with, just see how it feels here, and particularly see how your standing foot on the floor is responding to the balance. What do you feel in your foot? Where do you feel your foot contacting the floor? And if, like me, you've sort of chosen to stand on your easier foot first, you may feel reasonably stable. Okay, just let a breath come in, let a breath leave you. Good. Okay, we'll come down. We'll have a little shake out. We'll try the other foot. So if, like me, you know that this foot's a bit harder, just sort of see how it is today. So let the other arm, reach up through the other arm, start shifting your weight onto the other leg. So you're peeling the foot off the floor you just stood on, you're catching the top of that foot or your trouser leg, and your raised arm hand can come onto your breastbone, upper part of your chest. And then just settle there and notice, how is your standing foot responding? Where is your weight? How steady or otherwise is your standing foot? And sometimes when we focus on our foot, it actually makes us feel more wobbly. So we can then, for 2 or 3 breaths, bring our attention to our breathing. See if we can be aware of the flow of the inhalation and the exhalation through us. And of course, coming down whenever you want to. It's not always a choice. Have a little shake out. We're going to come down into a forward bend, and you can take it on in 2 things. You could take it on into a squat, or you could do your sort of sweeping your arms around the front of your legs, or you could do a bit of both. So come into a forward bend, and you can, if you like, you can do a bit of this sort of weeping willow movement, trailing your fingertips from side to side around the fronts of your feet. And also, if you know that coming into a forward bend is good for your lower back, and sorry, into a squat is good for your lower back, you can come down on into a squat if you like. So yeah, just a little bit of choice. That's lovely squat, Tracy, really nice. So as Tracy was doing, if you're in a squat, it's really helpful to sort of look back behind you between your feet, because that helps bring the whole of your spine into this sort of curving forwards movement. And so if you have come into a squat, it's nice, just thinking how nice it feels for the lower back. If you have come into a squat, then reverse the movement, come back into a forward bend, and then sink down into your heels, roll up into standing, or walk your hands up the fronts of your thighs. So we're going to come into a couple of movements where we're doing that sort of stepping forward movement. So just make sure you've got enough room on the mat in front of you. And you're going to step 1 foot forwards. So we've still got, you'll know this, we've still got that bit of sideways space between the feet. So you stepped 1 foot forwards, and then we're going to do this shifting our weight forwards and back. So we come onto the heel of the front foot, the ball of the back foot, with, again, encouraging our awareness to drop down into the feet. Right down there. And then we can settle with both feet on the floor, bending your front knee. At this point, maybe have your hands on your pelvis and just we're trying to feel planted from the waist down. And then what we're going to do first of all is with one hand on the breastbone, we take the other arm up and just start to look up a little bit. So we're letting the front of the body open. So remember, you've got your front knee bent, your back leg straight. You're letting your gaze come up a bit. You could add the second arm in. So you've got your arms coming up sort of towards the ceiling. Just a breath or two here, because you can always support your head with your head with your hand if you prefer, if your neck's better like that. And then you're going to come forwards, fold forwards over your bent front leg. So you could rest your arms on your bent front thigh, or you can fold all the way forwards, giving your head and arms down to the floor, resting your chest onto that bent front thigh. Look at your feet while you're down there and just, check what your toes are doing, particularly those 3 middle toes. Are they sort of long and relaxed on the floor? And then coming back up on an exhalation, sinking into your heels. Good. Have a little shake out with your feet. Come back to having your feet side by side. And then step the other foot forwards. And then come back to a little bit of this one, shifting our weight forwards and back. Good. So the ball of the back foot, the heel of the front foot, not both at the same time. And then eventually settle. So maybe bend the front knee, keep the back leg straight, feel really sort of planted and I suppose quite strong through the legs at this point. Couple of breaths, pelvis. And then again, we have, like we did last time, one hand on the breastbone, one arm up, and starting to bring our gaze up. So we're just sort of looking up towards the ceiling. We can bring one hand to support the head if we prefer. We can bring both arms up towards the ceiling. So feeling open and wide through the front of the chest. Let the breath come in, let the breath leave you. And then folding forwards over your front leg. So it could be your forearms coming onto your front leg. Very nice. And you could release all the way forward. So your chest comes close to your thigh. You let your head go. You let your arms go. And then let the breath come in, let the breath leave you. And in your own time, sink down into your heels, come back up into standing. Have a little shake out through your legs if you want. So we're going to come back in a moment through that stepping thing we were doing. Come back, I'm falling all over the place. Come back to this balance and then take it on to here. So come back to the balance we did a moment ago and go a bit further. So come back to stepping forwards with your first foot and come back to letting your weight rock forwards and back. So what we're going to do here in a moment is let the weight come completely into the front foot. And we're going to catch our back foot with our back foot with our hand and bring our front foot hand onto our breastbone. And just let yourself settle here to start with. And then from here, we're going to do that sort of reaching back and forwards movement. So really becoming expansive here. So reaching the foot back away from our bottom, reaching our other arm forwards. And we might come into the movement and we could come back to the sort of starting point, hand on the breastbone, and we could reach again. So it's up to you. If you find a place that you feel quite steady and you want to have a few breaths, then of course stay there. But if you're more interested in sort of moving today, and obviously, again, we don't always have the choice, depending on how steady we feel. And you know, again, if like me, that was my not very steady foot. If it's your not very steady foot, be near the wall. Use some support to help you. It's not cheat. Good. Lovely. So let's try side 2. So step forwards with the other foot. And then come back to this rocking your weight forwards and back. So again, for me, this is just quite soothing. Soothing and settling, and particularly if balancing doesn't feel soothing and settling to you. Good. So again, the same thing. Eventually, you're going to let all of the weight come into your front foot, the front leg hand on your breastbone, catching your back foot. Having a breath or two here in this sort of starting point, and then reaching forwards and back with the arm and the foot. And again, it might be that you come somewhere and you quite like it and you want to stay there, or you might come back to the starting point. It's fine if you have a little wobble and come out. Catch your foot again, reaching forwards and back. Breathing if you can would be good. Yes, and then come down. Yeah, lovely. Oh, really, that's it. Really nice. Well done. Yes, Tracy, that's exactly what we're going to be moving on to in a moment. So you are just like Tracy. You are going to be coming down through a forward bend and a squat, because that, yes, that I think is what, yeah, is what feels quite good after that balance. You come down through a forward bend and a squat, and in fact, we'll come back up into standing. So I just want us to feel ourselves in standing, and then we will come back down through our forward bend and squat and sit down into Cobbler Pose. So when you come down through that forward bend, make your way, through that squat, make your way back into a forward bend, and then roll up into standing. And let's maybe just do a little bit of this sort of what we started with in standing, swinging our arms, feeling everything sort of nice and loose and easy. And then let's settle in standing and just see, how does it feel? So my starting point often in standing is just looking at my feet. That's partly to organise them, but it's also partly to get my attention down there, and then closing the eyes if you like. You can have your eyes open if you prefer. Let your shoulders drop, let your arms hang. You can sway a little if you like, that's up to you. So you can either just settle in standing, or you can sway from side to side. Be aware of the whole of yourself in standing, but particularly encourage your awareness to drop down into your feet. So it's a bit like the sand in an hourglass. We become emptier up top, heavier down the bottom, or lighter and fuller perhaps. And then once more, we're going to come down through a forward bend and a squat, and we're going to sit down from there in Cobbler Pose. So you could, when you end up in your forward bend, you could turn your toes out. So you could come into your forward bend and you could turn your feet out. And this obviously can make it easier to keep your heels down, but it also starts, yes, so as you're bending your knees, they need to bend out over your feet. But this brings us into this sort of movement in the hip joints that's very similar to Cobbler Pose. So however you've done your squat, you're then going to lower yourself down onto your bottom elegantly as possible. If you feel you need to give your legs a little roll out in front of you first, that might be quite nice. And then come into cobbler pose. So leaning back on your arms first of all. And so in my last week of yoga, my two favourite things have been doing this cobbler pose twist, which we'll do in a moment, and a twist on my back, a supine twist. So let's first of all do a little bit of rocking in cobbler pose and see how that feels. So you can hold onto your feet or you can have your hands on the floor behind you. Just that's it. Exactly. Very nice. So we've been doing all of these things to sort of help ourselves settle in cobbler pose. And also think about how in cobbler pose, so if you've done a bit of rocking, we can have our feet a bit further away from us. We can have our feet closer to us. And perhaps one of these places feels a bit more comfy. What's it like to do a little bit of circling? So the sort of circling we often do in pinwheel, where so what am I doing? I'm circling anti-clockwise at the moment. That's it. So your pelvis and legs, they might be moving a bit, but mainly your sort of body is going around in a circle. And then you can obviously go back the other way. That's another thing you can do to settle. Just maybe lean back for a moment onto your hands. So yeah, so we're just trying to give ourselves a bit of an opportunity to settle in cobbler pose. We could also do this one, this side lengthening one. Oh, quite nice, leaning into one hand. Again, trying to feel, that's it, just trying to give all the weight of our legs and pelvis to the ground so we can really lengthen through one side of the body. Now, again, it might be good after you've done this to a couple of sides to lean back onto your hands, because I want us to do this twisting cobbler pose now. I'm going to swing around because I find when I'm doing this twisting cobbler pose, I want my feet a bit further away from my pelvis, but it might not be the same for you. So one hand sort of holds onto your feet or your ankles and the other hand comes back behind you. And I just find it really important to be on my fingertips in my back hand to try and help my spine stay upright. Just see how it feels to have a few breaths in this cobbler pose twist. And I can't promise you'll love it, but I'll just see. Good. So this front hand, Sheila, I would hold onto your feet rather. You could bring it onto your knee. That's quite nice. That's definitely a possibility. But yeah, it might. I often think about in this one. Let's twist the other way. I suppose I think about my arms in this twist as being very much like guy ropes that are helping to tether my spine upright. Because in cobbler pose, there's a real sort of tendency to for the spine to curve back. So I think maybe holding onto the feet perhaps works a bit more effectively as a guy rope. Okay. Good. Come back, lean onto to the centre, give your legs a little roll out. Yes, so what we're going to do now is we're going to lie down and do a little bit of breathing. We're going to move after this, but what I thought we would do is do a little bit of breathing lying down with our legs in cobbler pose. So it is really nice if you've got cushions you can put under your knees. Cushions or pillows. You don't have to. Just, I know it's so much more comfortable. And we want to be able to focus on our breaths. So most of you, yeah, if you've got cushions around, if you haven't got cushions, you can make your hands into little fists. Obviously, make sure you're going to be warm enough. You can put a blanket over you because we're going to do this and then we're going to do some more moving. So Alison, this works out quite well for you because you get to do a little bit of breathing before you have to go a little bit early. So settle down. Yes, if you're using a cushion, Sheila, you want to have those cushions sort of right up under, actually they are, sorry, I thought I couldn't see, yeah, right up sort of under these sort of tops of your thighs. Yeah, they might well be in the right place. It might just be me not being able to see that. And if the cushion doesn't feel big enough, you can always fold it in half. And then bring your hands low onto your belly. So I always think here, have the hands beneath the belly button. And because this is this chance to just let our belly be wide. We're not trying to hold our stomach in now. We're letting the belly be wide and soft and round and responsive. So letting the breath come in, and as your breath comes in, there's maybe that sort of more of that feeling of sort of wide, round, expansive in the belly. And as you exhale, perhaps your belly softens back a little bit. And don't feel that you're forcing your breath, you're forcing your belly in any way. It's more about giving yourself the time and the space to allow the breath to travel fully within you. And again, if you don't feel your belly moving, that's fine as well. Just enjoy the feeling of your hands resting on the lower belly, the warmth and weight of the hands. Yes, and exactly, Tracy. If at any point having your legs in cobbler pose gets too much for your lower back, then you fold your knees into your chest. Rocking. So if you're comfortable still in cobbler pose, we'll have, let's see, 3 more cycles of breath. So see if you can be just really present with your breathing. And Tracy, you could just do it with you. You could stand your feet on the floor if cobbler pose is too much. So can you be really present with your breathing for 3 cycles of breath? So feeling the in-breath expanding within you, feeling the out-breath emptying you. So one last cycle of breath, feeling the breath coming in, feeling the breath emptying you out and leaving you. And what you're going to do now is fold your knees into your chest, but I'd like you to cross one knee over the other knee. So it's the sort of cow legs on your back. So Tracy, I think this one would be nice for you. So rather than crossing your ankles, can you cross one knee completely over the other knee? And this is nice for the lower back. So obviously we do both sides. So cross one knee over the other knee, fold the knees into the chest. If you're someone for whom this is quite easy, the most important thing, number one, is to keep your knees close to your chest. It can be possible for some of us to then sort of catch our calves or our ankles and encourage the feet away from each other, but we need to keep the knees into the chest. There's no point doing that if your knees are coming away from your chest. And particularly as we're doing this to really lengthen out the lower back, widen across the back of the pelvis. So yes, number one thing is just that knees into the chest. So have a few breaths with one leg on top, and then you're going to change the cross of your legs and put the other leg on top and have a few breaths there. Good. And when you've done that on both sides, and yes, you can rock a bit from side to side. When you've done that on both sides, you can take your legs up to the ceiling and give them a bit of a shake out. Yes, send your arms as well if you like. And then bring your feet back to stand on the floor. So stand your feet on the floor, knees bent, feet standing on the floor. And come back to what we did at the beginning of class, letting your knees tilt to the right and to the left. And see how that feels at this point. So knees bent, feet standing on the floor, letting your knees tilt to the right and to the left. And feeling the weight. Now you've still got a few minutes if you want. and feeling the weight shifting side to side across the back of your pelvis. Because then what you're going to do is stop tilting your knees and come to tilting your pelvis on the floor. So tipping your pelvis towards your head, your face rather, tipping your pelvis away from your head. So feeling your lower back flatten out as on the floor as you tip your pelvis towards your head, the bottom of your pelvis comes off the ground. And then feeling your lower back arch off the floor a little bit as you tip your pelvis away from your face. And what I'd like you to do is take this on into bridge pose 2 or 3 times. So from tipping your pelvis, I think you normally, as we start to tip our pelvis towards our face and the bottom of the pelvis comes off the ground, that can then quite naturally take us on into bridge pose almost without even realizing it. Good. And I'd just like you to see, how does it feel to roll up and down 2 or 3 times? Okay, so perhaps make the bridge pose that you're on your last one, because we're going to do a little foot exercise and I'm going to do a bit more bridge pose. So let's make this the last bridge pose for the moment, and then fold your knees into your chest. And when I was thinking about feet this week, I was riding one of my favourite foot things, which is what I used to call elephant feet. So what we do from here is we let our feet, with our knees folded into our chest, we let our feet drop onto the ground. And we'll do that a few times. So you're trying to let the feet drop. I'm maybe exaggerating mine so you can feel that, so it sounds very thuddy, but you're not trying to stamp your feet on the ground. You're just trying to let them drop heavily. And so, yeah, repeat that a few times. And then what you're going to try to do is go straight. So drop your feet. And as soon as the feet are down, let your pelvis come up off the ground. And see if you can make that as part of the same movement. Drop the feet, the pelvis comes up, and you're in bridge pose. So it's, yeah, how simultaneous can you make that? Or maybe instantaneous. The feet drop, the pelvis comes up. The feet drop, the pelvis comes up. And just do that a few times. That's it, very nice. Do that a few times. Good. And perhaps from this we get that feeling of heavy feet, light pelvis. Good. And do that once more if you like, and then just have a couple of quiet breaths with your feet on the floor. And we're then going to do my other number one favourite thing at the moment, which is coming into a floor twist. I think we might have done, we did this last Friday. So when you've had a couple of quiet breaths with your feet on the floor, Alison, you probably need to give the floor twist a miss. Fold your knees back into your chest and take your legs up to the ceiling and give them a shake out. So for some reason, I'm finding that if I do this and then do my floor twist, it just feels really nice. So as you then fold your knees back into your chest, sort of start to wrap your arm. So even when my legs are sort of still up in the air, I start to wrap one arm around the back of my legs. Then I fold my knees in and bring my other arm out onto the floor at shoulder height. And then we're just coming into that sort of simple floor twist where we're letting our knees come down onto the floor in the opposite direction, to the opposite side from the arm. And I've been keeping my knees really close to my chest and keeping my arm under them. You don't have to do that. You can let your knees go down to the floor if your shoulder stays down, or you can put a cushion under your legs. And just see how it feels to arrive in this floor twist. And Can you settle in it? And yes, and Tracy, if it's not right for you now, that's fine. Stay there, do a bit of tilting of your knees. That's very nice. And it might be that from tilting your knees like that, you can let them come down towards the cushion for a couple of breaths, but they might not be good. And so if you're in the floor twist, it's just, can you settle there? And I've had a long time of not being able to settle in the floor twist. So if that's the case and you feel that you're hanging on a bit, come back to the center. That's fine. Bring your knees back to the center. We can use our exhalation, of course, to help us settle. So if you're in the floor twist and you're happy there, yes, again, that's nice. So when you come on to side 2, if you're still on side 1 and you're happy, stay there a bit longer. When you come to do side 2 again, come back to the center, take your legs up towards the ceiling. I don't know, I mean, I find it helps. I think it helps my lower back really lengthen out or something, just feel more pleasant. So take your legs back towards the ceiling, wrap your arms, you've got your thighs really close to your chest, settle your other arm on the floor and take your legs down in the opposite direction. And again, you can keep your arm under your legs if that's better for you. That's nice, Tracy, well done. Or you can, pop a cushion under your legs. Sometimes we need a cushion in between our knees if we take our arm out from under our legs. So that sometimes the cushion between the knees can be helpful. Very nice. And then if you're in your twist, it's perhaps a couple of big exhalations, and then it might be some sort of quiet breaths. Can you really settle there? Can we give the weight of the shoulder and the legs to the floor? Just let the breath flow through us. And in your own time, there's no rush. If you're still in your floor twist, you can have a couple more breaths, or you can bring your legs back to the center. You might like to take your legs up to the ceiling one last time. And then we'll settle down. In my book, it says quiet. So we will settle down just for a little bit of quiet breathing. And I'm going to read a haiku, so a very short poem that I've been reading in a few classes. I don't think in Friday over the last week, because it's on the subject of spring. And I think certainly it feels spring-like in Brighton today. So settle down, but perhaps not spring-like enough that we don't need a blanket. So settle down, or socks, blanket, jumper. And just if you're able, if you don't need to immediately rush off, then just allow yourself this little bit of quiet time where we're not doing anything, we're just allowing our body to settle. We're allowing the breath to flow through us. We're allowing our mind to soften and drift a bit. It's fine for thoughts, that's what our mind does, for thoughts to come in, for thoughts to drift out. And I'll read the haiku to you. I'll read it a couple of times because it's short, and let's see just see how it lands with you. How can we ever lose interest in life? Spring has come again. and cherry trees bloom in the mountains. How can we ever lose interest in life? Spring has come again, and cherry trees bloom in the mountains. I'm going to give you one more minute of lying quietly, and then I'll ring the singing bowl 3 times. So thank you, everyone. Thank you. You've got Shimmer Star here, which is
Oh, she must have so sweet.
she's so sweet.